Have you ever noticed how quiet you feel in a room where everyone is shouting at a screen, their hearts racing for a team, a score, a moment that feels life or death to them, but strangely distant to you? You nod along, maybe smile, maybe pretend to care just enough to belong. Yet inside you feel like you're watching a different movie altogether. If you've ever wondered why sports don't grip you the way they grip others, why you don't feel that fire, that obsession, that loyalty to colors and names, this isn't about being different. It's about seeing the world through a different psychological lens. People often assume that not obsessing over sports means you're detached, boring, or missing out on some universal human experience. But the truth is more nuanced, more human, and honestly, more fascinating. Because the absence of obsession doesn't mean the absence of passion. It often means your passion is pointed somewhere else, somewhere quieter, deeper, less obvious. At its core, sports obsession taps into tribal psychology. The human brain evolved to survive in groups. We crave belonging, shared identity, a sense of us versus them. When someone wears a team's jersey, their brain lights up in the same regions associated with personal identity. Wins feel like personal victories. Losses feel like betrayal. Dopamine spikes, cortisol surges, emotions swing wildly. For many people, sports offer a socially acceptable way to feel deeply without having to explain why. But if you don't obsess over sports, it may be because your brain doesn't need external tribes to feel whole. You might already have a strong internal sense of identity. You don't outsource meaning to teams or outcomes beyond your control. Instead of merging your sense of self with something external, you keep it inward, self-contained. That doesn't make you cold. It often makes you reflective. Many people who don't care much for sports are observers by nature. You watch human behavior instead of joining the chant. You notice how quickly emotions spread in a crowd, how strangers bond over shared excitement, how anger and joy pass like electricity. Where others feel the rush, you feel curiosity. And curiosity is a different kind of intelligence. There's also an emotional layer beneath this. Sports obsession allows people to release feelings they don't feel safe expressing elsewhere. Rage, joy, despair, hope, all packaged into a game. If you're someone who already processes emotions internally, who reflects, journals, creates, or talks deeply, you may not need that outlet. Your emotions don't need a stadium to be felt. They already have a home. Psychologically, people who don't obsess over sports often value autonomy over collective emotion. You don't like being told what matters? You resist hype, trends, and mass emotional waves. Not because you're rebellious, but because your nervous system prefers authenticity over intensity. You choose meaning, not momentum. But let's be honest, this difference can feel isolating. There are moments when you feel like you're missing a language everyone else speaks fluently. Office conversations, family gatherings, social bonding moments that orbit around scores and seasons. You may feel like an outsider, even when you don't want to be. And over time, that can create a quiet distance between you and others. Not because you don't care, but because you care differently. Here's the hidden truth. People who don't obsess over sports often care deeply about things that don't come with crowds or applause. Ideas, creativity, one-on-one connection, inner growth, meaningful work. You're not drawn to spectacle. You're drawn to substance. While others pour emotion into games that end after a few hours, you pour emotion into things that unfold slowly and visibly, sometimes painfully. There's also a sensitivity factor that rarely gets discussed. Sports culture is loud, aggressive, competitive. For some nervous systems, that's exhilarating. For others, it's exhausting. If you're emotionally attuned, empathetic, or introspective, constant competition and hostility can feel draining rather than thrilling. Your brain isn't wired for constant adrenaline, it's wired for depth. Yet society often labels this as a flaw. You're told to lighten up, to get into it, as if obsession were the default setting for being human. But emotional restraint is not emotional absence. Just because you don't scream at a screen doesn't mean you don't feel intensely. You may simply choose where your intensity goes. Still, there's a shadow side to this psychology. Sometimes not obsessing over sports isn't about preference, it's about distance. You may have learned early to detach from collective joy because you didn't feel included in it. Maybe you were the kid picked last. Maybe competition felt humiliating. Maybe winning and losing triggered something deeper, feelings of inadequacy, rejection, or pressure. Over time, indifference became a shield, and shields are useful until they keep us from connection. Not with sports, necessarily, but with people. Shared passions, even ones we don't fully understand, are bridges. When you reject them entirely, you risk standing alone on principle. The goal isn't to force yourself to care about something you don't, but to stay open to what it represents: belonging, excitement, shared experience. People who don't obsess over sports often walk a fine line between independence and isolation. You don't want to lose yourself in groupthink. You don't want to fake enthusiasm. But you also don't want to feel invisible in a world that bonds over common rituals. The challenge is learning how to stay authentic without building walls. There is something quietly powerful about you. You're not easily emotionally hijacked. You don't let external outcomes dictate your inner state. Your mood doesn't rise and fall with a scoreboard. In a world addicted to stimulation, you're proof that calm still exists. That meaning doesn't have to be loud. That passion doesn't have to be performative. And maybe, deep down, you sense something others don't want to admit, that obsession is often a substitute. A way to feel alive without addressing the deeper questions. Who am I? What do I care about? What gives my life meaning when the noise fades? You sit with those questions. Others drown them out with cheers. This doesn't make you superior. It makes you different. And difference is lonely until it's understood. So here's the realization to hold gently. You don't need to justify what doesn't move you. Your worth is not measured by how loudly you celebrate what everyone else loves. You're allowed to choose depth over drama, meaning over momentum, presence over performance. But also, stay curious about people, about why they love what they love. Not to change yourself, but to connect. You don't have to obsess to understand. Sometimes listening is enough. So ask yourself tonight, quietly, honestly, what do you pour your passion into instead? Where does your energy go when no one is watching? And are you honoring that part of yourself for hiding it because it doesn't look like everyone else's joy? If this resonated, maybe your call to action isn't to start watching the game, but to start valuing your own way of caring. And maybe, just maybe, to let yourself connect without losing who you are.